This is what my dad left this for me, and this is from 1986.
That's awesome.
It's my birth year.
That's
Yeah.
Everybody needs a birth year Rolex.
That's right.
I've been obsessed with that since I was a kid. My birth year is 88, so
Nice.
I've been looking at 88 Submariners for like 15 years.
That's amazing.
Still haven't gotten one.
Have you had your birth year bottle of wine?
I have not.
We need to consume that.
Yes.
What's your birth year?
93.
All right, let's
Was it a
make it
decent
happen.
year?
92 and 93 because Brandon is 92.
Yeah,
we
Brandon's
haven't found
92.
some good.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's make it happen.
88's decent in certain areas.
Yeah.
I think. All right.
All right. Where we
So tell me, pronounce the name of the wine.
Ducure.
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 Yeah.
And what does that mean?
From the heart.
Okay.
From the heart.
And what
And
language?
then this is
Is that
I'm assuming
French?
That's a heart.
Yeah. Yeah, it's French.
Okay.
Because I went to culinary school, French culinary school, with the strong fundamental belief that all great food stems from French food, and tying it around to who I am as a person. I guess cancers are like the heart on the sleeve type.
Yeah.
I think that food is the most transparent way to show someone I love you. And
Food or wine?
food and wine.
Okay.
Food and wine. But
Not mutually exclusive.
right. But that's why it's called de cure, because when you get something from the heart, you often and always usually get more than what you bargained for.
Right.
Yeah, and in the confines of any business, when you charge someone for something, anyone, despite your level of economic well-being, you want to get more than what you bargained for. You want to feel like you got a great value.
So that's a fantastic story. We, as you may or may not know, we are a business-oriented podcast.
Yeah.
So we are both fascinated in just the structure of business, how businesses get started, how they scale, et cetera. So
You can look at me for what not to do.
yeah, well, look at all of us for what not to do.
Yeah.
Failure is what breeds success.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, so with starting a restaurant,
Sure.
I had that obsession for quite a long time because I had worked in restaurants ever since I was 16.
Wow.
But I know
Let's
it
go.
takes a pretty penny to start,
does.
250 to 500, depending on the style of restaurant,
Sure.
the place, etc. Can you give the listeners and the viewers an idea of how you're going about starting this? Are
Sure.
you bringing on a lot of investors, a particular strategic investor? How'd you find the space?
That's a good question. The finding the space was happenstance. Obviously, the first things first. You either lease or you own, and sometimes you're lucky enough to find a place to buy. But from that point on, and as it pertains to a restaurant, raising capital, you go into your financials and your projections and try to look at gross and net profit and base what the menu's going to be off the demographics of the restaurant, and that's directly correlated to rent, and try to price that appropriately and competitively with what is in the area. Those were my first steps. And you go to this crystal ball and you try to get as close to those numbers as possible. And thankfully, over the years, I've been lucky enough to garner some fans who approached me. I didn't approach them yet, and said, "Hey, when you're ready, I would love to, fund your dream."
Right.
Because I've never been shy about pronouncing my dream. I've never been one to, I've declared it.
Yeah.
Quite
Just
a
the
bit.
first step.
Yeah, absolutely. And that to me were the first steps to kind of getting the ball rolling. So I have a lease that a friend was fortunate enough, I was fortunate enough that a friend afforded to me before a few tenants were to just merely live there.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally paradise. If you thought of a waiting room before you got into heaven, it would probably be the patio of my restaurant.
Is it the Old Town Scottsdale
It's in
area?
Old Town Scottsdale.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Yeah. Wait till you see it.
I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the projection? Are you planning for a specific launch date, opening date?
I was hoping or am hoping to be open before Super Bowl.
Yep. I think that's
Yeah.
everyone's goal.
Right. But whenever it is I open, I want to open as quickly, excuse me, as possible.
Yeah,
So,
gotcha.
but Super Bowl is the short answer of that.
And based on the wine, can we assume it's going to be more French oriented in terms of cuisine, or?
That's a based on the wine, based on the name,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you would assume so. However, the luxury of real, high-end French cooking is merely that it's refined through French technique. It's European inspired, meaning inspiration dawns from Spain, France, Italy. And yes, it'll have an emphasis of French cuisine, but inspiration comes from everywhere, and I'm merely but a storyteller, and I just want to bring the story of the wine, the food together under a setting that is going to be quite charming.
Yeah.
Well, then I also think you have to put your business cap on at that point too.
Yeah.
We talked about the individuals drinking Silver Oak at their house before they go to dinner.
Right.
Are they going to focus on California cabs instead of French? So having a little bit of, I guess, variation in there, you're well aware of is a good business decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you going to take from your current cellar as part of the wine list, or how's that?
You're not
planned out?
allowed to do that in the state of Arizona. That's
Really?
a really good question. That would be considered the gray market. You're not allowed to include wines off the gray market. So in the state of Arizona, the law dictates that it has to come from a 3-tier market. So I have vendors like Southern
Yeah.
Alliance, RNDC.
They got those monopolies.
Yeah, right. But nonetheless, slowly but surely, I'll have a wide and broad enough wine list, because despite the quality of the wine or gravity of the wine, in my mind, what's more important is making sure that you have an experience that matches it.
Right.
Because if
Yeah.
you buy a $200,000, $500,000 bottle of wine and you have a $50 experience, you're never going back. You're never going to go back,
Right.
And what I'm most confident in is that I can don a picture from the moment you step in to the moment you leave like no other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just going back slightly to the business type of question, I think it's fairly well known in the food world that alcohol and wine sales have the highest margins.
Sure.
And
100. That's what keeps
oftentimes-
places alive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, food is subsidized by the alcohol and wine sales. So, how much of an emphasis do you put into the wine selection and pricing versus the food selection and pricing, or are you agnostic to both?
There are sliding scales in certain schools of thought. Some people develop a business plan or a wine program around the idea that I'm going to move more wine at a less of a markup. Therefore, in the long run, at the end of the month, I'm going to sell more.
Yeah.
I like
Net
a
sales are up,
combination. I like a combination of both things. I just know that once my base is formed, because everything is so, young right now, it's not where it needs to be yet.
Sure.
But that's okay.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you've had this vision for so many years, and there's a lot of people that say, hey, I want to do this. They jump right into it. And
Right.
it's kind of a sink or swim scenario. I'm in the startup world, so I see people succeed or fail pretty frequently. Traditionally, it's more fail than actually succeed. So to see you go through the steps and highlight the emphasis on front of house, back of house, going to culinary school, checking all these boxes, being patient, waiting, and figuring this out strategically, that's admirable. And I think that it's exciting to see you go through this journey. And
Thanks.
cheers to success.
Let's go.
Yeah,
Cheers.
right?
Yes, sir.
I like it.
Yeah.
Cheers to no breakfast, 11 a.m. wine. Let's go.
Yeah. I think the next one we'll have to do on the patio,
Yeah.
the entry to heaven, as you.
Oh, I can't
as
wait.
you-
like it.
as
I
you
can't
say.
wait, man. Cannot wait.
Have you found or located a chef yet?
Yeah. I believe it was Henry Ford who once said, take away my company today, but give me my employees and I'll build it back tomorrow.
Yeah.
My team is the thing that I'm most proud of. Like, you can have really cool amenities like glasses, silverware, plates, whatever. The thing I'm most proud of are my staff, my soldiers that are going to choose to go to war with me on a daily basis. So yeah, not only my chef, my team. I find myself like I love my comic books and stuff like that, but I found myself like Nick Fury, like
Yeah.
assembling the Avengers because I have a badass staff. And like I said, I don't care of being in the limelight or not. I'm acting towards my goals, my dream. And, you know, if I can highlight them and make them feel like $1,000,000, then I'm good.
Yeah, that's great. Side shift briefly. I know you recently hosted a wine dinner at Christopher's,
Yeah.
which is a
Yeah.
well-known.
Yeah, I wish you were there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I had my brother in my place, so one Hoffman was present.
Yeah.
But tell us.
That's plenty.
Yeah,
No,
yeah. You typically don't want more than 2 or 3. But nonetheless, tell us about those types of experiences, collaborations, dinners like that.
Absolutely.
And how did you get to be involved with Christopher's? Because I know
get
there's some
so
history there.
giddy. Like that's, man, thank you for that question. He provoked it. I said, hey, we should do this. And I got to tell you, before I say anything, one of my favorite quotes is by, I believe, Einstein. Mm-hmm. He said, if I've seen further than others, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. Mm-hmm. To go from a kid who had no experience, who applied at 20,000 places that no one hired or you know, gave a second look at, to having one of the most OG chefs in the Valley, one of the most renowned names in fine dining, say, hey, let's do a wine dinner together. Like that to me was so, so cool. And, you know, previous to that, I just had some fun with friends and whatnot. And it was just, we're having a good time. It meant the world, man. It was really exciting.
I heard it's one of my favorite spaces in the Valley right now. I think they did an incredible job with the architecture and the design. I love it there. It's really cool. Have you?
And the idea of the
I've
chefs
actually never
being
been.
the
No.
servers, it's a fun time.
Yeah.
It's Wrigley Mansion, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've been to Wrigley, but I've actually never been to. I've never dined there.
Yeah.
So I know you can't pick one of your favorite children, but out of these 3, what's your?
So I'll tell you, out of these 3, what's my favorite? I will say that the crowd has very much so enjoyed the center bottle, which is the Kalita Vineyard.
Okay.
And it's like kind of the most bombastic, fruitiest, savory wine. And I think there's an underlying tone of this herbal mint kind of quality in the wine that's really neat. But taste is subjective. I think they're all beautiful in their own right. So for me, you know, both of you have been to Monarch. As before you walk into the doors, you pass by those big metal gates.
Yes.
That's what inspired this label to me. This is the gateway to my portfolio.
Okay.
This label is, you know, when we consume alcohol, you have the ability to do dumb shit. You know, you have the good, the bad angel, and that's kind of what this is. You're good and you're bad, and this
lead to the heart.
is well, you know, the heart is the winemaker's estate vineyard. This comes from a small 18-acre plot of land in Yamhill that overlooks some of the most beautiful sights and butts up to Shea and overlooks Grand Moraine.
So talking varietals for a second, help me on Pinot Noir, because
Sure.
I used to be a huge fan, and for I don't know what reason, but I kind of fell out of love with Pinot Noir.
You can leave.
The last
Doors that way.
the last few times I've had it, there's been like, it could have been the choices I've made, but
Sure.
there's been like a funkiness to it that just hasn't sat well on my palate. So
Fair enough.
talk to me in terms of your expertise on different varietals and when you choose what you choose, because I know food has a big part of it.
100%. And most of the time, like, my enjoyment out of being on a restaurant floor and talking to a guest out of the blue is taking them out of their comfort zone after I've earned their trust. That's by far one of my favorite things.
You did
to
very
do.
well with me and my wife, by the way.
Yes. Good.
Shout out to Flor de Pingus, one of
That's
the
right.
best.
Yes, sir. What I enjoy is that I don't discriminate. I merely think the product is only as good as the people you share it with. So I'm not really too hung up on what the price of the item is. So for that reason, Pinot to me, I'm a sentimental dude. I proposed to my wife in Sonoma, where it's Pinot Mecca, and so Pinot to me has always had a near and dear place to my heart. But I still think that there's so much potential in the Willamette Valley to make amazing Pinot Noir. And as someone who's bought a wine for, as you said, one of the most formidable restaurants for the past 7-8 years, having tried thousands of wines. Oftentimes I worry about, I scrutinize the label because did you put as much attention into the clothes of the garments as you did the personality?
Yeah.
Is everything congruent? Did it match up? And that's what I think about.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And I know this has become more of a popular thing, but I know it's been around for centuries. The wax top versus the foil top.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Perception. Perception. I think perception's key, I wouldn't say to any point of significance, but oftentimes in a restaurant, the 3 same Pinots or similar Pinots from the same brand will have a slight variance to it. And you hear more often than not people pulling the wrong label, the wrong brand. To me, it was just more of an aesthetic appeal. That was it.
I dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the look a lot better. I think it looks. Trying to figure out the appropriate word here. It looks sexy. I don't know. Maybe
Just-
that one. I
just
don't
go
know.
out with it.
Yeah, let's go with it,
All right, let's see. So would you say you have a soft spot in your decor for
That's
Pinot?
right, baby. That's right.
And so with the wax tops for the listeners, not the viewers, you just go straight in with the
There's
corkscrew. There's no
pretend
cutting.
as though nothing was there. And if you're worried about a mess, you can brush the top with a lighter for a few
Oh,
moments.
it'll melt it back down. That makes sense. Never thought about that. Yeah. I'm usually the guy that's trying to cut off the top of the wax to make it look. All right, good to know.
Okay, so we have the gateway.
The gateway. So this is the Chehalem Mountain, and my impact on the wine was merely as the barrel sampling came to be, how much whole cluster, how much oak, and what time in oak. So this is completely destemmed. All the oak's neutral, is aged for about a year in oak.
What's the vintage on this one?
2019. They're all 2019.
So you both are probably going to laugh, but I get like a marijuana stench to this.
There's like I
like
said,
a hoppy,
yeah,
almost.
yeah.
This is the funk I was talking about.
I love this.
Pinot's got the funk.
But again,
Is it mushroom?
totally.
Okay.
Totally.
Soil.
But again, as most wines are open, they're capped with something as an antioxidant, as a preservative. So if you just let that blow off for a moment, you're going to get much more of an expression. That's usually the reason why you decant. So
I get a vanilla
cool.
aftertaste.
Awesome.
Is there a benefit? Is there a larger gain from decanting a cab versus a Pinot, or are you going to have
Oftentimes it's suggested that you don't want to decant Pinots because of the aromatic profile being so delicate. However, certain wines like the last one we'll go to, I think you could totally decant because there is a fair amount of oak on the wine, and it's nice to soften that out, to let that kind of calm down. So. Yeah,
Very interesting.
But the whole reason of decanting, the main reason of decanting, is to remove sediment. You see how that collected right there?
at the top? Mhm.
And
It was either that or be the fact that Eric left it in the car for
Yeah, I
2 hours.
think
It was one of the
that
two.
yeah,
Not positive.
a little bit. Yeah.
Maybe. So can you give us a quick lesson from a somm? When you drink your own wine, how would you kind of classify the taste notes and everything that you think about as a sommelier? Because I know you talked early on that you're a detective when you drink sometimes.
Yeah.
Versus the enjoyment aspect, because we can get to that. But for your own wine, How would you talk us through this?
I find value in wine comes from typicity, and the way I'd talk you through it is merely look, smell, taste, and do those things match up? And I think a quality of a great wine, and if you're wondering beyond the logical facts of what makes a wine good to great, and from a monetary standpoint, is that lingering finish. Do you taste it after that first sip, and does it just kind of hang out on the palate? That to me is, where great quality in wine comes from.
So one thing that I think my most favorite thing about wine is the fact that if you have a bottle in, let's call it 2010 to 2012 to 2015 to 2016, I guess 2022 to whatever it is, 10 years from now, it changes, and it changes whether it's very fractionally daily, more so annually, and the availability of that wine shrinks over time. It's people
Sure.
are drinking it, so it's
Yeah,
that one
supply
bottle of
and
wine.
demand, baby.
Yeah.
Exactly. So having a wine that's from 2018 and 2019, okay. As it goes forward, are you going back to the way you taste it? Are you analyzing it with expectations of it to change over time? How do you identify whether or not it's hitting what your expectations were? Are there some of the analytics that are going on in your head as you're?
These are such a minuscule production that there's no way I could do that. I just knew that I was so excited about the quality of fruit and the collaboration itself that I couldn't.
No, absolutely.
But I think that I was excited about putting my name on something that was of such quality to raise the excitement for the restaurant and the brands.
No, I like it.
That was it.
I'm enjoying this. This
Yeah,
is great.
it's very, very interesting. I
Eric
like
is
it a
now
lot.
back into Pinots.
Yeah, I
Good.
mean, you're getting me there.
Thanks, bud.
So
It's the gateway.
yeah, well, putting on your sales hat, if a listener was contemplating, should I buy this wine? How would you describe it? If you were in your restaurant setting and somebody was asking, pointing to it on the wine menu, how would
Right.
you describe it to them?
When I'm on the floor of a restaurant, whether it be mine or not, and it's crazy in my career, I haven't actually worked at a lot of places because everywhere I worked there for quite an amount of time. But in this setting, if someone asked me whether I should buy it or not, I want to get as close to what their point of relatability is and find out what their palate is, because, I want to make them happy. That's
Sure.
what matters most to me. Merely describing the wine, I would say it's a savory, red fruited, food friendly wine, to put it in very simple layman's terms. You don't want to use any word like tannins or phenolics or, it's whatever. You just want to let them know, like, it's a lot like this and very similar and very relatable. To that point, I don't want to push something onto someone, because I would rather have you come in twice a week rather than twice a year.
Sure,
Right.
So,
that makes sense.
yeah.
Out of curiosity, what's the price point on these?
Retail, they're all $50 a pop.
Okay.
I enjoy it.
That's really good. I like it.
And so between the three, I know
Uh-huh.
we're going to perhaps touch on each, but how in the winemaking process, how do they differ?
Oh, that's a great question. This is a blend from different vineyards. All the fruit here was taken off the stem. As we proceed along the path, this is the highest in elevation and the warmest site.
Which
and
sorry
You're
for
fine.
interrupting. Let's pause there.
okay.
Elevation, how does that go into a wine? What's the significance?
It's usually drainage. So this comes from the Yamhill Carlton, and drainage and exposure. Those are some of the more important things you want to pay attention to. So that's what elevation kind of has to do, and the amount of diurnals. But in general, 2019 was an amazing vintage in the Willamette Valley. 2020, not so much, mainly because of the fires, but whole cluster. meaning the stem, seed, skin, or the whole nine was pressed. This one has 25% of the entire batch was pressed whole cluster.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And 15% of this is in brand new Francois Ferrer barrels.
Love it.
So this is the quote unquote crowd pleaser, if you will.
Yes,
right?
this is the Kalita Vineyard.
And this is all Sonoma?
No, this is they're all Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
Gotcha.
all Oregon. So this is from Yamhill Carlton. This is from the north west corner of the Yamhill region. The vineyard, I believe, is planted in 2000, and it produces some of the best fruit in the Willamette Valley.
And remind me, what's this one called?
It's just the Kalita Vineyard.
Got
We
it,
just name it
Kalita.
after the vineyard. Yeah.
Similar nose.
I think on the nose, Pinots. That's one of the things I struggle with Pinots is on the nose. There's a lot of overlap to me in a
Fair
sense.
enough.
That's also an uneducated nose, so that's
You're fine. Have you heard that quote? Your first 10,000 photographs are your worst.
No.
Yeah, just the law of mastery. You want to attain mastery in anything. Your
I know
first
the 10,000 hour
Yeah.
rule, so that
Yeah.
makes sense.
What about
Yeah.
your first 10,000 podcasts?
Well, that's what you're gonna need to get there. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's taken quite a bit to just get to this point, and
So
yeah,
an interesting point of reference. These are from Oregon.
yeah.
I've been reading and hearing that both Oregon and Washington are becoming like the new Napa.
Right.
What's your viewpoint on?
I think they both have a reasonable distinction of the two. I think the history of Napa Valley just spans way further back, and that's the beautiful thing of wine. You know, it's 25 ounces that ends up being a few rows of vines of a very specific plot
Yeah.
of a very specific place and time, because it's time stamped. So
Yeah, and one of the reasons that I've read about, whether it's true or not, is with some of the climate change going on, especially in Napa. There's
Right.
more fires over the last 10 years than maybe ever, and moving more north, because when you go further from the equator, you're
Right.
going to cool down quite a bit.
Sure.
So with Oregon and Washington being northern of Napa, do you predict over the next maybe 50 to 100 years that's going to be
the quality of wines, the underlying flavor of wines, it's like saying, do you think a red Gala apple will ever be as good as a Fiji apple? They're different apples.
well there's a fact Gala is always going to be the best, so
Fair enough. Fair enough.
if you ask me,
Fair enough.
there's no question.
Yeah, touche. I merely appreciate the area and region for what it is, and the amount of effort that it took a handful of people
Yeah,
to make it a place of significance. Like, you know, in Oregon, if the Druids didn't go there in '87, or David Adelsheim or David Lett or the Ponzis put a flag down and say, hey, this is a place for great viticulture, I would have never had the opportunity to show you these wines.
sure.
Yeah.
One of my favorite wines that I've ever tasted of all time is Quiselda Creek in Washington.
Yeah. I know what the hell
Yeah.
you're thinking. Colsita.
Colsita, excuse
Yeah,
me.
you're
Sorry.
fine.
You don't hate us.
You're fine. You're fine.
Colsita?
Yeah.
Okay, Colsita Creek. And I heard they sold the vineyard a few years back. Is that inaccurate?
I'll never lie to you. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But in the Columbia Valley, there's not a wine with a better resume. There's not a wine with more 100-point scores than Colsita Creek.
It was mind blowing. I hadn't had a wine like that outside of Napa or France.
It's very special.
Very.
It's a very special bottle of wine.
Yeah.
So if we shift back to here, so I do get a little bit more of the fruity on the second one. It's definitely there. It's I would say this is probably, in my opinion, a little bit more approachable for somebody who just wants, you know, I want a bottle of Pinot that's good, smooth.
Yeah.
I can totally relate with that one.
Cool.
If we call this phase one, what was your biggest takeaway from phase one? And then what does a future potential phase 2 look like for you?
Having more, man, that's a really good question. My biggest takeaway
It's
from
the wine speaking to me,
phase
so.
one, my biggest takeaway from phase one was having the impact on the end result. Beyond doing a barrel blending or a barrel sampling of what's available and what you can and cannot do, having a deeper understanding for the vineyards that the fruit comes from. I think that to me would be really impactful. My goal, and this is a silly goal, but one day I always thought of myself as just being an old hermit, having a big beard, wearing a robe, just having a bottle of wine and just being, to myself.
Yeah.
That would be great, and to learn how to make some wine and just, kind of be onto myself. That, yeah.
I like it.
That's like phase 10.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
What do you-
working towards. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
To me, this is more of a refined wine versus the first one. The first one seemed to be more lively and a lot more going on. This is more almost, I don't want to say settled, it's not the right word, but refined and
Well, why
clear.
I said approachable is because I think this is somebody that's more mainstream that just wants a good
yeah,
Pinot.
this is a great
It's
wine.
not as risque as this one in a sense. Not that that's risque at all. Like I personally prefer the first one over this one, but I understand what you're talking about for the fruity and the
Awesome.
approachableness.
What do you think of my notes?
I love it. I mean, everyone is subject to their opinion.
I know.
And that's fine. Like,
Whether it's right or wrong.
yeah, no, you're fine. Yeah. I just thought, later on in life as I get older, each bottle of wine is the trapped best effort of that family or that vineyard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it is to me. And if it brings, someone a smile or a great memory, then I've done my job.
So when you talk about phase 10 and your jacket with your bottle of wine, making your wine, where is that located? If you were gonna make wine anywhere, where would you be?
Wow. Shoot. Do you know how beautiful Oregon is?
It's incredible.
Oregon coast.
Yeah.
is
Just stay away from Portland.
Pretty
Yeah.
spectacular. Yeah.
Oregon is pretty incredible. I wouldn't discriminate, but yeah, Oregon.
Okay.
There's many places I could be, but Oregon would be awesome.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Besides wine, well, before I get there, how often do you drink wine? Is it a nightly occasion?
No, it's definitely not a nightly occasion. Ever since departing, Monarch and gearing up for the restaurant, about a weekly,
Yeah.
I would say, occurrence, and it's whether it be to study or to analyze or better understand a wine area. And that's the great thing about it, is that you can tie in so much information to something that you can then consume.
Sure.
It's a pretty cool way to tie in every sensory.
Yeah. So do you, when, let's say weekly, maybe it's a date night with your wife, do you come here and consider your collection and figure out what's going to be good to drink? And then
It just depends on entertainment
Yeah.
purposes, if we have people over
Sure.
and whatnot. Seldomly do I like to actually go out because it's a hard time to turn off a switch
Right.
in your mind.
Of your analytical
That makes
brain.
sense.
Yeah,
I get that.
But there's oftentimes my job is a very social one, and for that reason, I very much so like to kind of recover, so to speak, from like speaking, listening, and like responding.
So on
Yeah.
Sunday morning at 11 a.m., you decided, hey, come over and let's do a podcast for an hour.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, you're
Appreciate
welcome,
it.
sir. Absolutely.
So what you described, I have similarities in my personality.
Yeah.
I almost consider myself an introverted extrovert.
Yeah.
Do you relate to that?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think a lot of people are that way, where if we're in a social setting, we can turn that on and
Right.
be very social. But
Yeah.
we like to perhaps recharge in a independent way, or
Right.
just kind of shut things off and relax.
Yeah.
That's how I approach things. It sounds
Absolutely.
like you have similarities to
Right.
that.
I mean, there's so much going on,
Yeah.
and there's so much on my shoulders right now that when I can, I just like to
Yeah.
just breathe.
Take a breath. Yeah.
Decompress. I
Yeah.
can respect that.
Yeah.
And one of what I was going to before was, besides wine, what other hobbies or interests do you have right now?
Just for therapeutic reasons, I love exercising.
Mhm.
I am probably in the gym 3, 4, sometimes 5 times out of the week,
Mhm.
which, for mental reasons more than anything, I'm very proud of. Otherwise, I love ping pong.
Yeah?
I love ping pong.
Do you ever do pickleball?
No,
Okay.
I've not yet.
All right. Okay. I'll have to get you on the pickleball grind.
Yeah, but other than that, my life's kind of boring right now. Just kind of filling it up with a checklist of what has to be done before the restaurant itself opens up.
I like it.
Yeah.
Nice. So, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I finished this wine before either of you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's move on.
So we'll take the
So
last.
we know Eric's starting to get a little tipsy, so
Yeah.
we're all on the same page.
Now we're going
Right.
to the heart,
We're going to the heart.
All right.
the most prominent of the three.
So yeah, this one has the most amount of new oak.
So you can see you can see the different color in this one. I feel like maybe.
What do you see, Chris?
So when it was first, you know what? It potentially could have been the granite. I was gonna. It was a little bit darker. Is this the appropriate?
Oh yeah.
Because I traditionally I'm this guy.
Yeah,
I'll be having
sure.
a conversation. I'll kind of
Sure,
just do
you're
this.
welcome to
I
do
think
that.
you're just fidgety.
The greatest thing, like I would encourage anyone to refrain from, is this.
Yes, it warms up the wine.
Yeah, it warms
That's
up
why you
the
have a
wine,
stem.
but also the oils of your hands interfere with the smell of the wine.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So you're not really gonna get much out of the wine, and you look like an asshole. If you drink wine like this, you
The
look
most
like an
important
asshole.
piece. Don't
yeah.
hold it like that because you look like an asshole.
This is now
I
a
love that.
PSA. Do not
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
Do you? So, what about the people who? I don't know if I can do it easily with
Watch out
the
for
microphone, but that hold it by the base.
Yeah, I mean,
Like that?
It just, yeah.
Like this?
I mean, what are you doing? Calm down.
Does that people actually?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever
I've seen
seen
it. I've seen
anybody
it
do
before.
that.
At the restaurants.
I've seen it as well,
Yeah.
and like, yeah, yeah, calm down. Yeah.
Okay. So locally, because we're in Phoenix
this one.
/
I like this
Scottsdale,
one.
what if you were to pick a few restaurants locally, and it doesn't have to be places you've worked at in the past?
Right.
What
There's
what would
not
you?
many plugs I can do.
I know.
I've worked at less than a handful.
Where are you going these days for a night out?
My guilty pleasure of whether I'm by myself, whether I'm with my wife, or with a dear friend would be Angry Crab Shack. I'm a
Really?
fat boy on the inside.
Oh,
Give me
boy.
an apron and some,
So what pairs well with Angry Crab Shack?
if you want to consider like the spice factor, or just crab in general, champagne
Yeah.
in a clutch. Champagne is always wonderful. If there's no spice at all, I think a nice Chardonnay
Okay.
or white Burgundy would be wonderful. If there is a spice level, maybe perhaps a demi-sec champagne, I think would be quite delicious as well.
Champagne and Chardonnay are very interesting. So can you give the listeners a couple of good options for each?
Sure, yeah. If we're in Oregon, I love Double O wines for their Chardonnay. I think they're unbelievable. If we're in California, you can't talk about Californian Chardonnay, not talk about Albert. That's probably one of the most highly regarded examples of Chardonnay. As well as I think Hirsch Vineyard Chardonnay is wonderful as
What
well.
about Farniente?
It's good.
Yeah,
It's good.
just good.
It's good. It is
I enjoy Farniente.
it's very good. And it has its time and place. It has its time and place. I love Chardonnay in general. And it's different. It's not something that I would personally go out of my way to, dive into. But don't get me wrong, if that's what's around, I'm gonna crush it. And in terms of white Burgundy and what's available, what I've most commonly seen at the stores and whatnot, like a Total Wine or Bevmo is like Vincent Girardin, Lucien Lemoyne, Albert Bichot, William Fevre. Those are some quite delicious white Burgundies to have with any seafood,
Sure.
let alone crab.
And champagne.
Obviously you can talk about Veuve like love.
Not Vouv.
Yes, not
Veuve
Veuve.
Clicquot.
Don't say Vouv, people.
Yes,
Because I was saying it.
because you look like an asshole. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
Veuve.
Eric, do you want to hold your glass on the
Yeah, no,
real quick?
I'm gonna hold it.
We're gonna
just
drink
like
some
this.
Veuve.
Yeah.
Examples. I'm only thinking of examples of champagne that you can actually go to the store and buy. There's, Total Wine has in recent years has definitely stepped their game up. Delamont's wonderful. Delamont is the baby brother to one of the world's most highly regarded champagne houses, which is Salon.
Yeah.
So Delamont's fantastic. Ruinart is amazing. You can find those at Total Wine as well. Gosset is fabulous, as well as Bollinger is wonderful. Those are to name a few, but we could have a whole other podcast only talking about champagne.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a quick rapid fire
Go.
question for you. Favorite vintage of Dom Perignon?
Favorite vintage of Dom Perignon? I would have to say it would be the 1970 Dom Perignon that I was lucky enough to have with a dear friend when she turned 50.
Incorrect. It's 2008, but
favorite, right? That's your favorite.
favorite restaurant you've ever been to?
I would probably say Boulevard in San Francisco, merely because I've owned the cookbook way before I ever went there, and it was my wife and I's first Michelin star experience. So the amazement of knowing what that achievement looked, smelled, and tasted like for me alone, was unbelievable. Like, I'll never forget that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Go-to cuisine. Can't be Angry Crab Shack.
No, yeah. Go to cuisine would, if you think that in that last hour before you kind of shut everything off to go to bed and, a quick dinner, the most easily would be Italian. Because it's so versatile and so delicious and so filling. But Asian food. I could eat Asian food any day of the week.
Orange chicken is my weakness.
All day, man. All day. That's awesome. I could eat sushi 7 days a week. That's my...
I'm
That's
with you
the
there.
most Americanized Asian food of all time. But
100%.
yes, I love sushi.
Yeah.
To put some more context into
Orange
it.
chicken.
That's so
Mr.
funny.
Panda Express over
Yeah.
here.
Hey, no. It used to be the Bamboo Club. Back up, they had a handful of them. That was my most favorite restaurant.
Bamboo
and then,
Club. Throwback.
Exactly. Then
Yeah.
it's consistently been Chang Spicy Chicken to make up for that.
Okay,
It was the
okay.
closest replacement. And we don't do Panda that frequently. That's like
know.
a once a year thing at most.
Where's your go-to for sushi in Arizona?
That's a good question. Harumi.
Okay.
Where's
I think
Harumi?
off of Adams Street in downtown Phoenix.
Okay, cool.
That's where my wife and I've had some really amazing sushi. But if you're looking for a transcendent Japanese experience, not just a sushi experience, Shinbei will knock your socks off.
What's right next to...
Shinbei is Sizzle. If you want to do a bang bang, you go to Sizzle.
Korean barbecue as the
Yes.
appetizer and
Yes.
Shinbei as the main course.
what about
100%.
right across from Clever Koi in their Midtown location? It's like across the pond.
That's
Across the
ama-
pond,
Yes,
yeah.
that is amazing sushi. That is amazing sushi. I would give you kudos for that. So.
And orange chicken.
Yes, sir.
My go-to is Roca Accor for
Well,
sushi.
is wonderful.
I love
It's
Roka.
a wonderful dining experience.
Do we
Yeah.
even say Nobu, or are we just?
I mean, Nobu's-
I don't have Nobu pockets. I couldn't relate.
Yeah.
Oh, so what you do Nobu
Yeah.
during the week if you're there before 5 p.m. or I
Uh-huh.
think they've got a happy hour that ranges in between like 3 to 5.
Cool.
So it's dangerous. Been there.
That's awesome. If people come in hoping for a happy hour, I'll tell them I'm always happy. I don't need to give you. I don't need to give
I
you a
know
happy
exactly.
hour. Yeah.
Any other questions that I have for the?
Okay, so before we sign off here,
Yeah,
we love watches.
Yeah.
Watches is a huge piece that we touch
Damn,
on
I'm
the
glad I
podcast.
wore my watch.
Perfect.
Us too.
So I know we recorded slightly earlier, but I'd love to know the story behind the watch.
You know, there are a handful of people that impact your life the way they do. My dad was it for me. He just led his life by example. He didn't physically give me this watch, but in his passing, this is something I inherited. And what kind of watch? It's a perpetual. It was from 1986, the year I was born. Before my father was in the retail business, he was a very successful oil executive. I don't know if that's how he acquired it. I'm not exactly sure how he acquired it, but this is what I got in my inheritance.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
Thanks, homie.
It's a great watch too.
I appreciate
That
you.
thing is timeless. That is,
Yeah.
it's going to be cool for the next 200 years.
Thank you,
Two-toned. I love it.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
And Chris, you have one final question.
Ooh, okay. So we got to get really deep here. And okay, the name of the podcast is Mind the Growth. So the question that we ask everybody is, what does the word growth mean to you?
To me, the word growth merely is the point from where you start to the point to where you end. In short answer, that's what growth would mean to me. That's it.
I like it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Short, sweet, and to the point.
Yeah.
That's my favorite method.
Well, cheers. Thank you for having us. This has
Bro.
been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here.
Of
Can't
course.
wait to be on the patio. We
Yeah.
are looking forward to the
This-
patio. That's going to be fun.
Keep
Yes.
a lookout for part 2.
What's the name of the
Wesam.
restaurant one more time?
De Cure.
The
Where can they
Cure.
find it?
De Cure. 7007 East First Avenue.
Perfect. Old Town Scottsdale.
Boom.
Anybody watching, it's going to be the best
Let's
restaurant in
go.
Old Town
Cure
Yes.
Scottsdale.
before
Sir.
the Super Bowl. We're gonna
Yes.
see it,
Yes, you are.
and
Yes,
the
definitely.
reservations are gonna be hard to come by. So you're gonna
They
gonna
really
have to
are.
know somebody.
You really are. And I'll get you in.
Okay, deal.
I'll get you in. Cheers.
Thanks again.
Cheers.
Thank you guys. Thank you.